Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. She is a journalist and author exploring the tension and evolution of our collective culture, and she is the author of the book the Social Contagion, no other than Miss Alison Sher.
Hello.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Allison, and can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Well, I'm the author of the Social Contagion, and this is my second original book concept. But I've worked for 15 years as a journalist and a communications specialist, as well as helping other people write and publish their books.
Miss Alison Sher, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. How would you define a social contagion in the context of today's cultural and political climate?
So it's as much as I could be unbiased, like politically partisan, unbiased. It's a look at the past 5 years since the pandemic started up until now inside of the U.S. and it explores how media, misinformation, propaganda, and just like our created a lot of the suffering that we experienced during that time, and how those events have directly shaped what we're going through right now inside of our country.
Who do you believe in the target audience for this book, and what do you hope they take away from it?
So the book is really an exploration of radical politics inside of America and extremism. So I think like anyone who feels very overwhelmed and confused with all of the different political messaging that we've gotten over the past 5 years, whether it was around COVID and public health measures or even larger geopolitical events that are happening currently. I think it's for anyone who gets kind of addicted to watching the news, but doesn't know exactly how to interpret things, or anyone who's looking for clarity and a perspective that holds the different extremes that we encounter in one place to try to find our way through the narratives that we're being fed right now.
Core themes and arguments. The book discusses how ideas spread like viruses. What mechanisms do you see accelerating ideological contagions today?
What mechanisms?
Yes,
Well,
mechanisms.
social media is definitely a huge one. And then we also have a lot of different news sources that, in and of themselves, have a lot of political bias inside of them. And it can be difficult to discern what's real and what is a spin that a news source is taking. So I think that's definitely another factor, is this changing landscape of journalism that seems to have arisen since Trump was introduced into the public eye. And I think that there is also this confusion, like a large degree of confusion and fatigue and anger, hatred that we were encountering, especially in the online space since COVID. And And I think that also fuels a lot of this viral spread of ideas.
You frame America's culture war as a battle of competing narratives. Which ideologies do you see the most contagious right now?
Well, on one side, it's definitely MAGA, right? It's Make America Great Again, it's Trumpism. And then on the other side, there is somewhat of a radicalized leftist ideology that also has
Hmm.
gained a lot of like popularity and traction, and they seem to be fundamentally ideologically opposed to one another. So yeah.
How do social media and technology amplify these ideological contagions? And is there a way to mitigate their spread?
Well, one way there's this very complex topic, but one way is that we consume media now based on an algorithm. So we will get content fed to us that echoes the angle of content we previously watched. So you can get into a echo chamber of only watching content and information that affirms your own confirmation bias. So that's definitely one that radicalizes people into thinking a certain way without like making an effort to understand people who see things in a different perspective.
Miss Allison, do you believe a certain ideologies are inherently more virulent than other, or does context determine their impact?
Probably whenever there's like a fear behind an ideology. And in COVID, we were all very afraid, right? So the the pull towards trying to figure out things or try to find a way to explain what's happening and protect ourselves definitely became more extreme. Um, and yeah, anything where there is a mass media engine behind it, like national level US politics, there's millions of dollars poured into disseminating these ideas in these channels, right? So that will definitely have a much larger impact than other ideas. Like the ideas in my book will probably not virally spread as fast. But yeah. Does that make sense, Daniel?
Makes sense, Miss Allison. And let's talk about the cultural and political analysis. How does the social contagion explain the polarization we see in American society today?
It explains it from the lens of the main current or the main events, historical events. I guess at this point they're historical. The main historical events that shaped public perceptions and how different media channels portrayed those moments in time. And from there, how ideas began to form and hatred began to spread.
Are there historical precedents or precedents for the kind of ideological contagious you describe?
Well, like competing political systems like democracy and communism are definitely always competing against each other on the global stage. So I think what we're seeing in America is really just an extension of that, centuries and centuries old philosophical battle over our social contract.
What role do institutions play in spreading or containing these viral ideas?
Well, in COVID, we definitely saw a lot of censorship, which was a way to contain ideas and especially viewpoints that were challenging government narratives. So certainly censorship is one tool that has good and bad consequences to it, for sure. Can be used to protect people, and also it can be used to control people. Yeah, and then that's what we saw in the pandemic. We saw this almost like collusion between the government and social media around narrative and ideas, and what ideas were acceptable and what ideas were not. But in America, people tend to be incredibly rebellious. So, in a lot of ways, the censorship just made people more skeptical of what was going on.
Do you see any positive examples where viral ideologies have led to constructive societal change?
Yes, in the term like viral ideologies is kind of a metaphor for like viral spread, like the virus of COVID, and what it really points to is this idea of memetics, which are essentially units of cultural conversion that are yeah, communicated through thought forms, and those thought forms and those ideas can be very positive. It can be like recycling, or stopping a war, peace, or feminism, or but whenever things become very extreme, I notice that they tend to harm. They start to harm, even with good intention.
Miss Allison, as a journalist and an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
First, sell this book, get this into as many hands of people as possible. And I'm very interested in talking about mass media reform and analyzing biases and combating misinformation from the journalistic space, as well as fostering dialogues, like bipartisan dialogues and peace building along culture war lines. That's definitely something I'm interested in. And then I think my next book will be a sex book. So I'm going to leave politics behind, but sex can be very political. But but for right now, it's the larger kind of transcendental mission of this book is to help people collectively process and heal from the trauma that we all experienced during COVID. And maybe now that some time has passed, we can actually start to talk about it, and also to create almost like a media literacy toolbox for the readers, so they start to understand better what they're looking at and how it is shaping their perceptions of reality, and understanding that so that we can make space for other people's perceptions as well.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Allison, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a journalist as well as an author?
Well, the journalism space is really hard because so much of it is online now, and people expect content for free. So it's definitely not the easiest job because it's difficult to monetize writing. But my advice is that if you're super passionate about sharing a message and you can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't stop thinking about it, then go for it and you'll find your way.
Mhm. Thank you for that advice, Miss Allison. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Ooh. One book that influenced me on this was called, I have two. This is a conservative thinker, but The War on the West by Douglas Murray. Always looking for more moderate voices on either side of the political spectrum, and I find his work to make a lot of sense without veering into these extremist territories, conspiratorial territories. And another book that influenced me in this process of writing this book was called Hate Incorporated by Matt Taibbi, who was the political correspondent for Rolling Stones for many years. So off the top of my head, those were two books that helped influence this one.
Thank you for that recommended books, Miss Allison, and the Social Contagion. How was the research process?
Ooh, well, I started researching it while I was in quarantine, and I was just watching all the things happening, the protests, everything shutting down, and just looking online and seeing that so many people had an opinion on what was happening and so many different points of view. So I started to synthesize them, and I started to look at different resources for understanding the events that were transpiring, and started listening to more pundits and thinkers from the opposite side of the ideological spectrum than I previously resonated with. And from there on out, it's been like 5 years of just documenting everything that's happened.
Hmm. If you could have every reader absorb one key lesson from the book, what would it be?
Boom. I think the lesson is to have compassion for how other people see the world. And politics tends to be a topic that people say, don't talk about it because it's just going to start fights and conflicts and drama. And same in many ways with religion, because they're two topics that we tend to project our issues onto, our issues of feeling victimized by life onto those two topics. And at the same time, I feel like we're at in the US, we're just in a culture war, but all around the world, there's so many actual wars happening, and all those wars start as culture wars. But if we, in our own little bubbles that we live in, can create peace at a time when there's just been a lot of fighting, right? A lot of fighting and conflict and enemy outpicturing, then that will do something to, I think, make this world a better place. And just help us move on from the past and move on from all of the manipulation that's in our information ecosystems that pits us against each other, essentially.
Miss Allison, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and mental health 101 love letters in its third season, and movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Allison, do you think there's a hope for depolarization, or we luck into an escalating cycle of ideological contagion?
I think that when Trump finishes his second term, and granted that he doesn't try to, become the forever president that some people are afraid that he's going to, and just like try to bypass term limits, I think we'll come back to normal. Or at least the issues kind of getting swept back under the rug to a point where they're not forefront in people's consciousness. But whenever Trump is president, there tends to be a significant amount more of tangible social unrest. So I just think because the leader of our country is such a polarizing figure in general, that contributes deeply to the situation that I wrote about in the book. And it just so happens, he's been in the forefront of our minds for it'll be almost 15 years by the time he finishes this term, right? It's been 15 years of Trump. So it's been a wild ride for everyone. He's a very interesting political figure.
Miss Alison Sher, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Yes. So if you go to my website, www.alisonsher.com, you can see links to my book and my previous works and other books that I've worked on. And if you want to get in touch with me to help write your book with you, you'll see a contact form on that website as well. And I would love to talk to you.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Alison Sher, because if you support her, for sure, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Alison, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
More to come, people. See you soon.